What's going on, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Bettin and Boozin here on the HHH Racing Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Roscoe, and this starts episode 107, covering the opening weekend of the fairgrounds. Welcome, everybody. Hopefully, you guys are all going to enjoy the show tonight. As I mentioned, we're covering the late pick 5 for opening weekend at the fairgrounds. It's a very fun card, 3 Louisiana bred stakes, but above all else, again, we'll just welcome back to those down in New Orleans. Hopefully we can put on a good show and do you guys some justice tonight. As you see scrolling on the bottom of the screen, please go down below the video player. Please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button if you guys are enjoying the content, because not only does it show us you guys are enjoying the content, but it pushes these videos out into the YouTube algorithm to hopefully bring like-minded horse players like yourself to the HHH Racing Podcast. And of course, for that, we thank you. I found some cool analytics for you guys. Well, not cool for some facts, but obviously cool to show analytics. 61% of you guys that watch the podcast are not subscribed. Why not? If you guys are already coming back, you guys are coming back for these multiple podcasts in a row and you aren't subscribed, why not? You're already coming back anyway. Please go down below and hit the big red button here on YouTube. We would greatly appreciate it. As I mentioned, you can look down below right now, bettinandboozin@gmail.com. Please email me with any questions, comments, or concerns. Also, you see the show list for every single week. Of course, we're at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We have Pacific Horseplayers with Noah Maher and Ryan Anderson after this show at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, so you can stick around for them. And then, of course, Picks and Ponies tomorrow at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with Howard, Pete, and Paul. So please tune in to all of our shows here on the HHH Racing Podcast. And of course, if you can't watch them live, you can always watch them as a replay. And not only are they all posted here on YouTube, they're also posted in audio form, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Anchor. Please go rate, review, and subscribe over there if you're more of an audio listener, or you're headed to the gym, you're headed to school, headed to work, whatever you want to do, and you need to listen to an audio platform, we got you covered over there. So please go over there and subscribe. New socials, of course, I've talked about it for a couple weeks now, but we are on TikTok and Instagram at Bettin and Boozin Podcast. I post highlights of the podcast, schedules for the upcoming week, and much more short form content. So please go follow us over there at Bettin and Boozin Podcast. And speaking of handles, the Howard's main HHH Racing Podcast handle changed. It changed from at H Kravitz to now at HHH Racing Pod, a little more official, if you might. But HHH Racing Pod is Howard's new Twitter or X handle. Please go follow him if you don't over there, as he posts a bunch of updates as well as obviously his own personal X or Twitter. So go follow him over there. Patreon.com/HHH Racing Podcast, guys, is where you can get our power picks. Over 710 total picks since February of 2021, and we are still well in the positive, $2.14 throughout the entirety of those 3 years, almost 4 years now at this point, which is actually insane. And if you subscribe to our aforementioned power picks, $15.99 a month only, $4 every single weekend, and you get 2 full tracks of price plays, spot plays, pick 5 grids, everything you need to be successful on any given Saturday that you're playing the horses. We here at the HHH Racing Podcast have you covered with the power picks. Again, that's through Patreon, patreon.com/HHH Racing Podcast. The link is also in the description. And of course, if you want to see previous editions of those power picks before you buy them, or you just want to learn more about the podcast, HHHRacingPodcast.com is the place to do so. Without further ado, guys, let's get right into the handicapping, and I will bring on my 2 fantastic co-hosts, and we'll get right into it with the chat, and of course, starting with the late pick 5 at the fairgrounds, starting with my man from the East Coast of New Jersey, Patrick Kunsel, and a man from the Ohio State University, Charlie Freeman. Boys, what's going on tonight? We're fully back, full house.
Yeah, nice to be back.
Yeah, it's nice to have a full group of 3 again and not just have to have me carrying Kyle the whole time. It's good to have somebody else's voice. Yeah. Well, don't forget the last few seconds of our last show where, without being paid extra, folks, I had to guest host without planning.
Yeah, you had your 4 seconds of fame while my internet died. I hope you relish that, because you're never getting that again, buddy.
No, I
hope you relish that.
Course. Everybody thought I was going to try to make it about me. I just finished up saying what I assumed you were going to say. I was disciplined. making my way up the ranks.
At least we'll take that. If Charlie's disciplined, we'll take that. Matt Miller, of course, is here. Matt, thanks so much for joining the show. Ed Burke is here. Ed, thanks so much for doing the show. Very much appreciated. Katie, of course, is here. Terry Frank, of course, is here. And C Money, of course. C Money, haven't seen your name in a while. Time to play the game, my friend. I can't sing it like I was about to say Aerosmith. That would be really bad. Oh my God, what's their name? Why is it? I don't know why I can't remember their name. Oh my God, that's gonna kill me. So you guys can make fun of me in the chat if you guys can think about who sings that. Oh my God, that's gonna kill me. Katie says can't find the Instagram account at Bettin and Boozin Podcast. Katie is the Instagram account. It should just be Instagram.com/Bettin and Boozin Podcast. So if you can't find it, I'll try and send something in the chat here in a second. Motorhead, thank you. Ace of Spades, that's what I was thinking of. That's why it was completely messing with me. Thank you, C Money. Greatly appreciate. Of course, how could you forget the sound of Motorhead? But guys, let's get right into it here. It starts in the late pick 5 at the fairground. Starts in race number 6 on Saturday, as that's what we're going to cover. And it starts with a really nice optional claiming 50,000 non-2 winners lifetime with a full field of 11. As I bring up the screen right now, I'll bring up the picks, of course, in a second. Full field of 11, headed by a pretty lukewarm favorite, the number 3, Gavea, for Marcelino Pedroza Jr. and Al Stahl Jr. at 3-1. Second choice is the Breeders' Cup runner, Austere, Declan Cannon, Brendan Walsh at 4-1. Third choice for my good friend, for my good man Nacho Correa, Strike When Ready. Jose Ortiz takes the mount and is 5-1. Guys, going to bring up our picks right now to start off the show. As you can see, our picks right now on the bottom of the screen, we all have the same top 3, which are very interesting. Again, we're not going it doesn't look like we're getting very creative here in the first leg. However, 2 of us are going with the number 4, Austere. Pat, you are going with the morning line favorite, the number 3, Gavea. So you're going to start us off. What did you like most about the number 3, Gavea? And of course, for all of you that are new here, we're going to bring up the time form, show their projected pace scenario as Patrick talks about his top pick.
Yeah, for sure. And first off, I think it's great that, hopefully Fairgrounds will have a good turf course this year, because we should get some good turf race in there, for most of the winter, which would be awesome. And, this race kind of starts that out with a nice, allowance optional claim, like you said, Kyle. With Gavea, she did not appreciate Kentucky Downs last time. And, obviously I like to look at Al Stahl as somebody who's very smart at placing his horses. So, I trust him in the fact that he believes this horse is a graded stakes type of horse. But, we kind of need to be honest. She looked a little bit above herself in mostly all of her races, especially being longer odds. But she fits back in here into this allowance field. And I just feel like, she just fits this perfectly. She's tactical. She's found a way to win. Obviously, she, won that allowance race, coming from off the pace. But she's found herself to be forward in others. And I don't see why she can't be in this spot. That's kind of where I expect her to be. So, with what type of pace is signed on here, I think she should sit that nice stalking trip at going a distance, she really should appreciate in the mile and a 16th.
I mean, yeah, and I showed the time for him there, Pat. You see, you kind of have her sitting that nice stalking trip. The 9 is the horse that looks to go out to lead based on time form's perspective. But Charlie, our number 4, Austere, who had a really nice 2-year-old campaign, winning a maiden special weight at Ellis, then winning the juvenile fillies by open lengths. And didn't really run bad in the juvenile fillies turf at all. Came back. Florida Oaks kind of ran. He didn't run too bad. Just was a length and 3/4 off of it. Then the Appalachian might have been a little bit overhead. Also was pretty far back in that race. Now getting a break to here, but Brendan Walsh usually points his horses really well. So this should be a pretty live runner coming back for that barn.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think obviously the natural one question is, we haven't seen the horse since April. So I think that would be the one thing to see, does she need a start or not? But, I feel like this is kind of one where I don't want to go as far as say you and I have chased this horse, because I think I've only really given out this horse on top, or had this horse in consideration on top in the Appalachian. I know 2 back that I had, I'm never going to try to pronounce that name. That's a horse that I chased for a while and finally got the win with. But yeah, I think Austere, just from pure ability, like you were kind of talking about, Had a really nice 2-year-old year. Really hasn't, since that debut where, again, I know it was only a 49, but hey, the horse won on debut. She really has been consistent in those, in the high 70s, low 80 form. And she is pretty lightly raced. I mean, I know she's only 3, but still 5 races isn't crazy, which to me is a positive because she has plenty of room for improvement. But I agree with you. I think Brendan Walsh is very smart about placing horses in these kind of spots. Also first Lasix, which I think could be beneficial to her. I just think she has a ton of room for improvement, but like in a good way. She has plenty of space to keep getting better.
I actually like this type of layoff, really, especially with Brendan Walsh. I can go and I can just show people the stats that I was looking at before, greater than 180 days, 31 for 163, 19% in the money, 19% on the win end, 69 in the money at a rate of 42%. And you go off of that 180 days, you go off that 180 days. If you go at Fairgrounds, it's a lot smaller sample size, but still 2 for 8 with 6 in the money. So a 75% range in the money when he does this move at Fairgrounds. And a lot of them do come earlier in the meet as he saves up these types of horses. So Austere, again, hasn't been on in a long time, maybe needs one. However, I feel like this is a very well put spot for this horse, matched up very well with others in this race, along with the horse that should be morning line favorite, Gavea. And to your point, Patrick, your points are very well taken. Maybe she even won her 2. She hasn't won a race by more than a head. I'm not too sure that she's kind of a horse that likes to get in open space. She likes to run really well. Just I'm not willing to trust her at low odds based on, the fact that, maybe she just doesn't like to really win by open lengths. Can, of course, win, but especially with the trip, she's going to get facing much tougher. But I would argue also Austere is obviously facing much tougher as well. Just going to be who's better on the day, in my opinion. But not creative at all, guys. But I think 4 or 3 are definitely the two that definitely at least warrant a look on top. The one that I thought was a little interesting, and obviously you guys all did as well. You guys have her higher than I do. The number 6, Strike When Ready. This is a horse that should be sitting a closing trip, should be pretty far back, and has been in really all of her starts except her maiden breaker. So, Pat, she should sit a really nice. She should sit a decent trip. Just a matter of will the pace be hot enough for her to close at least on the win end, but or underneath.
Yeah, these are always the types of horse, especially when you see the steady progression. With the buyers, you love watching them close late, but when they don't close for you and they get nipped at the wire and something like that off a slow pace, it's just tough to kind of handle. But this horse, I definitely could see in the money and is one of those, tri-key type of horses, I would think.
Charlie, and then obviously anything you want to add. This is, other than that, guys, I mean, there's not really any other horses I want to talk about in this race. They're kind of all a little bit of a step below, it seems, with these 3. Pay Me Perfect and Trail Ridge Road would be the only other 2. They'd kind of be more of an underneath type play for me at 10-1 and 10-1 and 8-1. But Charlie, anything you want to add with Strike When Ready, and then anyone else you want to talk about before we move on?
Yeah, I mean, I know it's not a major distance difference, but I don't mind this horse by any means getting back to a mile and a 16th where, don't get me wrong, I understand that there was some setup, but they still didn't go that fast in that Colonial Downs race 3 back where she got the victory. So again, I think getting any extra distance helps. Obviously, I do think to an extent with her being a closer, she is pace dependent, but again, another one who's only at 5 starts can keep getting better. And I feel like, again, specifically with that Colonial victory where they didn't go that fast, I don't think she necessarily needs the pace to be a complete meltdown to at least get somewhere in the money. I think to win, absolutely, because I feel like the 4 that we have on top, Kyle, will likely get the jump. But I don't think it's ridiculous to say, at least if there's some moderate pace, because obviously they really slowed it down in that Keeneland race towards the end. She didn't really have a chance to get going when down the stretch there was no pace to close into, and that's when closers like to show their major kick. So I just feel like with a developing 3-year-old who's faced some decent fields, I know she hasn't been in stakes races, but those Keeneland races aren't bad by any means.
I agree.
I just think if she gets any pace at all, she's certainly a factor, and I agree with Pat. I mean, I would want a little more of a price for a reverse tri-key horse than 5-1, but I still think she's a nice horse to mix somewhere in the exactas or tries underneath.
Yeah, and I mean, that last race, I mean, she lost to Kehoe Beach and Bella Wrights, and that's obviously not a short field by any means. Last horse I'll talk about real quick, brought up in the chat. Katie has the horse in second. Paul Collins says Curtis and Stidham combo are always tough at Fairgrounds, and obviously we can take a look at that. We can go customize here. DRF Formula, guys, of course, not a sponsor, but I mentioned this on Frank Scattoni's Best Bet show that I did last Sunday with him for Del Mar. I don't use anything else. Again, not a sponsor, but would highly, highly recommend if you don't use it. You can use Michael Sidham at Fairgrounds 15%. However, when you put Ben Curtis on as well, it goes up to about high teens, 18%, 7 for 38 last year. And if you just use today's jockey, he's 20% with Ben Curtis, 21 for 103. So definitely one to look at for sure. Paul, thanks so much for commenting in the chat. Greatly appreciate it. And if you guys don't know how, both on X and on YouTube, bottom right-hand side of the screen, you'll see a text box. Please feel free to type in the chat anything you want. We read every single one. Matt Miller said also look at the ROI. That's absolutely a great point as well, although I did not bring it up. I'm going 4-3-6. Charlie's going 4-6-3. Pat's going 3-6-4. I promise we're not all completely together like that the entire rest of the way. So let's move on to race number 7, guys. Race number 7 starts the one of 2 stakes races on the card. There is one earlier on the card that I actually told the boys to handicap. However, there's a 2-5 favorite in there, and we all came up with the same exact picks. So it wasn't exactly going to be very entertaining necessarily. However, I will bring up the field just so everyone can take a look at it. It's race number 3, the Donovan L. Ferguson Memorial Stakes. It's a field of 6. The number 2 Secret Faith in there looks really, really tough, obviously, as illustrated by the morning line at 2-5, 2, 3, 4. The 3 horses that are, higher odds really just don't match up necessarily based on buyers and just who they've run against. So 2, 3, 4 really just seem above the rest, but you guys should be, if you guys are playing horizontals, number 2 should be very, very tough in that race. But again, going back to race number 7, guys, one of the 2 stakes races we will talk about today. It's the Andrew Ney Memorial Stakes, going 6 furlongs on the dirt, draws a field of 11 again. The morning line favorite is the number 6, Braun and Brow. Ray Lou comes back to the fairgrounds. Norm Cassie takes over the training for this horse at 3-1. Second choice, just to the outside of that one, the number 7, Not On Herb for Ben Curtis at 9-2, and third choice is shared between the number 3, El Dinero, and the number 8, Hiya. That's a good one. I like that one a lot. Moving over the picks right now, you'll see 2 of us are going with the number 6, Brian and Brow. Charlie, starting with us again. We have the same top 3 as well. However, Patrick's going a little bit off the beaten path, at least underneath. However, he does have the number 8 on top, Hiya, that we both like somewhere. That Charlie and I both like somewhere in the mix. So, Pat, we like to give Charlie his floor here to talk. However, you're the one that continues to be different. So, what'd you like most in this one about the number 8, Hiya?
Yeah, listen, Hiya has shown tremendous speed, early in races, and I think in this spot, comes out of that Keeneland race where, honestly was a little bit. That was above shoulders, kind of tough spot there. So I kind of throw that one out. Kind of chalk it up, and then you kind of look, and this horse has pretty much been in the money in 4 out of 5 races. Now, the pace, as Kyle brings that up, you kind of see that there could be a fast pace in here, so that could be tough, but gets the outside draw, so we'll have to go, and, we'll get Jose. So I feel like should sit that forward trip that I'm talking about. I'm just, it's tough because, they come out of a couple of these races where, you kind of look at, you wonder what type of field it is, and they come into this spot, and, they've all faced the same type of competition, so it's hard to measure them a little bit, but I feel like the 8 has found, his right spot in this race.
Well, Pat, I'll tell you what, I mean, out of the 2 speed horses, this is easily the one I would want out of the 2, not to mention the fact that Jose hops aboard, as you mentioned. The last time out, lost to Alpine Thunder only by 2 lengths. Global Sensation, again, very good fields at Keeneland, now comes back into this spot. 1-for-1 at the fairgrounds, however, it was a little while ago. 3 for 10 in 2024. All 4 of 5 wins in his lifetime coming at the 6 furlong distance. So, Charlie, obviously we're interested in him as well. You and I are probably both seeing that it is a fast pace. This number 2 that we showed, Go Sugar, with Bet Mitch Get Rich aboard, it definitely has to go in this race. So you'd imagine the pace could heat up for someone that we like, but we both like Haya at least to hang on for a piece.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, coming off of back-to-back buyer tops, I know you and I were all over Global Sensation, and the horse just ran poorly in a hot pace last time out. But the reality is Alpine Thunder is a nice horse. Global Sensation, I'm not going to say one bad race makes the horse not good. Gunner, I'm forgetting the full name of the horse who got third, but I think that was a horse that I then gave out, who I think Gunner Bay ran okay last time out. Yeah, I mean, I got fifth, but lost by 2 lengths last time out in that tough field. Shout out to you for picking Like a Salt Shaker with the Arlington connections and Chris Amy. But has been running against tough horses and is improving.
Hear that, by the way, guys? I got some props from that man down there. Look, I don't get that too light here.
I like, and it was far from a chalk horse initially, and then was dead on the board. So you got to just own it when someone's right, especially when you like to
appreciate it, man.
But no, I hear it. But yeah, for me, honestly, I think the main concern, I think from a value play, I love this pick, Pat. I don't know if you'll get 6-1, especially with Jose Ortiz aboard. I think my main concern, again, as you touched on, is the pace projection. As we move into the 6 who you and I have on top, I promise, folks, this is not about the Gulfstream bias. I do normally say, and look, this could come back to bite me, but I know my Gulfstream horses well when they're elsewhere. And when I say to get on one, they usually run pretty well. And when I say to get off one, they're usually pretty bad. Look, now this isn't your typical Gulfstream horse, and that you can see this one's been running at Fairgrounds, Ellis, Churchill. This is one that really only just recently was running at Gulfstream, but has a true stalking pace, which I think sets up nicely. Gets Ray Lou back aboard, which I like a lot. And actually, Kyle, I know we covered this horse, if you remember last time out, because I gave out the winner in that race. And I think I had this one in second or third, and I was the only one to even have this one in the top 3. Now, obviously, on that day, it didn't work out, but the reality is for the place that's quote-unquote Gulfstream Speedway, they kind of set standard fractions. And for a horse who was stalking, that didn't really work out because the horse that won and the others were more forwardly placed horses. But again, I think off the layoff in this spot against an easier field has, run in some restricted but still stakes races, should save the ground and get a nice trip. I just think the 6 makes a ton of sense here.
I love this horse in this spot, Charlie. You mentioned the state bred races before. This horse has been running in open company for the last 3 races. Hasn't run bad, realistically speaking. Now comes back to these state bred races where this horse absolutely wiped the floor with these last time down at Fairgrounds. Now comes back. This horse is 8 for 9 in the top 2 at Fairgrounds, 10 for 11 in the money at this distance, with 5 wins in both of those categories that I just mentioned. 2 for 5 so far in 2024. Both of those wins coming at these state bred stakes races, both at Fairgrounds and at Delta Downs. I love Bronnenbrow in this spot. Think he gets a really nice stalking trip. Ray Lou's back aboard as he was for all 3 of his races down at the fairground or down in Louisiana last year. This spot makes all the sense in the world for Bronnenbrow, coming off a little bit of a layoff, which should be at least a little bit of a look towards. However, he did this exact move last time. Mark Casse did this exact move last year, coming from July to December, only lost by a half length to a decent horse in Mangum. Now comes back off of May for Norm Casse. But everything in this race points to go for Bronnenbrow. I really, really like this horse in this particular spot. Charlie, I'll let us finish up real quick. Then let Pat talk about his other 2 horses, or his other horse that he has underneath that we don't have. Clear as a Bell, I believe is how you say that. This horse ran really well last time out. Buyer top by far. Just going to have to try and put it together again here, but looks to set another nice stalking trip.
Yeah, I just think this one is, kind of similar. I mean, not quite on ability, but you're also getting much better odds than the horse that we have on top. You look at the 10, obviously the gate's going to be a little bit of a question, but reality is another one that likes to sit more of a stalking off the pace trip like our 6 horse. Another one who I understand doesn't have the dominant wins, but, nonetheless, you look at the 2 state specific stakes races and ran a decent second. And then after that last time out comes back and, wins going away. And also what I liked is we got to see a different side to him because, normally he has been one that's sitting off the pace, and it's kind of been one where if it's cold numbers, he's kind of just had to, live with it and not gotten the setup. But then you look last time out and, going at 6 furlongs, which means it is going to be against some faster horses because the race before that he tried to go out to 7 and they weren't getting on with it. So he decided to just, before they even got to the stretch, take over and then just pull away down the stretch instead of just accepting the cold fractions. And I just like the versatility that we're starting to see from this horse. And look, again, I don't know if he can necessarily win, but the fact that he's even a possibility makes it really interesting because 8-1, I think, again, with connections that aren't quite like Patrick's 8, I think you will get a lot closer to these odds. But I think there's one that makes a ton of sense underneath. And if you wanted to in horizontals, I think this is one value alone that you would want to consider including.
I agree. At least off that last race, if he can continue to put it together at the end of his 4-year-old year, granted it was back in August, so a little bit of a layoff. However, another horse for course, Charlie, 5 for 7 in the top 2 at Fairgrounds, 4 of those being wins, and 7 for 9 at the distance, 5 of those being wins. So only a lightly raced 4-year-old, 12 races, has 8 in the money though. This is definitely one to use at least underneath, I think, if you're trying to play vertically in this race. Patrick, I'll let you finish up here with your 2. Anything you want to mention about Brown and Brow as well that I didn't get to mention, or your number 3 horse, El Dinero, horse that you're really interested in underneath, also should be sitting a nice closing stalking trip in what looks to be a pretty decent pace.
Yeah, and that's kind of what my idea is here. 4 for 4 in the money, 2 for 4 on the win end at the Fairgrounds. Listen, this horse has been, either the favorite or I would say the second choice in his last 10 races. And most of them were all state bred, against some sort of, a lot of horses within this field or, interchangeable type of thing. So I just, this horse will be in my best bets portion, just because I think that, with the horses that we've covered and talked about, I feel like you can kind of lock that up, in a try or an exacta. So that's what I'm going to try and do. I think that this race allows that. Especially at 6-1, where this horse should be the 3rd or 4th choice, it'll allow me to kind of get this horse in underneath.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And again, 6-1 probably will get a little bit more than that. Has lost to these horses in this race in the past, so that might allow a little bit more of a decent price on this horse. Ed Burke brings up a good point. Why is Ortiz there? I don't know about the last one, Ed. Obviously, we would love to see that. However, Churchill doesn't usually have those types of wagers, so hopefully we can do it. Ortiz is there because he's obviously been riding in Kentucky at Churchill. Churchill ends, I believe, December 1st. It's after Thanksgiving. I know that. Thanksgiving is really late this year. So December 1st, Churchill ends, and then it's on to Turfway for Kentucky. Jose probably didn't want to ride at Turfway, so now he's going to go down to Fairgrounds, I guess my assumption be for the winter. I'm going 6-10-8 in race number 7. Charlie's going 6-8-10. Pat's going 8-3-6. Guys, moving on to race number 8 on the day, and this is the other stakes race that we're going to cover on the card today. The Jacob Morrell Memorial Stakes, going 1 mile and 70 yards on the dirt. Full field of 10 again as well, and with a lukewarm morning line favorite, the number 6. All Night Moonlight. Jaime Torres comes down to ride this one at 7-2. Second choice, the number 3, Bahima Star for is that Jairo Rodriguez? I think it might. Shane Wilson is the trainer at 4-1, and your third choice all the way to the outside, the number 10, Highland Creek, Charlie McMahon for Brett Calhoun at 5-1. Guys, switching over the picks right now. Patrick and I are both going with the number 6, All Night Moonlight. Charlie's going with the number 7, Blue Cheese, which I don't have anywhere actually. Patrick at least has in third. So Charlie, you finally get to go first. You finally get the shine. What you like most about the number 7, Blue Cheese?
Kyle must be a ranch guy, by the way.
Yeah, I'm definitely not a blue cheese guy. I'll tell you that much. But which I guess could play a little bit into this. Charlie, what'd you like most about blue cheese?
Yeah, I'm personally into a different type of blue cheese, but I don't think a lot of people will get that. You guys will. Anyway, yeah, I know this one. Look, I knew Pat would appreciate it. The 7 is certainly a deep closer, which, could be tricky. I mean, look, is there a ton of speed? Not necessarily, but I still think there's enough to make it possible. I just think blue cheese is honestly finding, his form again, even in his 5-year-old year at the right time. I mean, you look at some of his efforts, last year or earlier this year, and a lot of those mid-80 buyers, which to me in this spot certainly fit enough to win in this spot, and then closed out with that disappointing 77, had that little bit of a layoff, and then had that typical thing we talk about where first time off a layoff they might need one, even though the horse got the setup, was just 17 lengths back is just way too far for any horse. I mean, unless you're like Sierra Leone, that's not going to happen. But, still closed up to get within a length and a half. And then last time out, despite even going to the cutback and with it being a cold pace, again, similar to the horse we talked about, Kyle, with that 10 in the last race, I just really, with Blue Cheese, like the versatility that I got to see in this race, this horse last time out. Again, cutting back in distance for a deep closer. They set cold fractions. All of this should have been a disaster for Blue Cheese. But instead, the jockey just got on with it. And again, kept him a lot closer than usual, stayed within striking range, and then off the turn was able to go by and get it done. And I understand the horse was 23-1, but is working forwardly, seems to be getting back into that strong form that we saw earlier in the year, and has shown some versatility that intrigues me. And I feel like this is the race you should go price shopping for.
I mean, Pat, you have this horse in third, so you kind of agree to that point. However, you might think that he just has a little too much to do, as a lot of the times Blue Cheese does.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that this horse is kind of in a spot where, you don't really know what the pace setup is going to be like for this horse to be able to run into. And that's kind of where I fall in with the 6 all night Moonlight. I just feel like, especially the race 3 back, I thought was, really impressive. That was at Evangeline. I just thought the way the horse kind of sat off, pretty deep, and even 2 back too, being 13 lengths, and horse ran on really well with it, but ended up getting more forward through the race, and progressed through the race, which I like. And these state breds, I looked through some of them, like, their purchase price and how much they've made. It's impressive. I mean, this 4-year-old's made over $300,000. Like, I know this horse has stayed within the state bred ranks, but I mean, just, making a lot of money. And I think that's really cool. And, I know you have a lot more to say about the 6 there, Kyle.
I mean, I just like the fact that this horse can sit a little bit closer than the horse like Blue Cheese. Obviously came from flying from 14 lengths back. Definitely don't think this horse has to do that. Didn't really take to the mud, I don't think, at least out of the gate, but was able to really rally down the lane. I think this is where this horse wants to be. Got the ultimate equipment changed since the late race last time out. So should be in a really good spot to fire a big one. Obviously, and won that Evangeline Downs race in open company as well. Then got back to the state bred races, ran well last time, and then just couldn't really put it together last time in a pretty cold pace. However, that was at 7 furlongs. This is now at 1:70, where I think this horse might just run a little bit better. You can see in the distance numbers, 3 for 6 on the win end, 4 for 6 in the money. And another horse for course, 5 for 9 in the money at Fairgrounds, 3 of those being wins. So definitely All Night Moonlight. This is probably, I would say, my softest pick of the whole sequence. I think this is definitely a race, as Charlie mentioned, that you could really see a bomb come in. Mm-hmm. But All Night Moonlight, although I did end up on the favorite here, I just feel like if All Night Moonlight runs his best race, I think he's definitely the most likely winner in this field as it stands. I have the number 10, Highland Creek, the older man, in second. No one else has him anywhere. So talk about him real quick. He's ran 16 times at the Fairgrounds, 9 in the money, 3 back. That race at Evangeline Downs where he beat Blue Cheese. Granted, Blue Cheese was probably in Alabama and came running into Louisiana to finish at just 2 3/4 lengths behind Highland Creek. However, this horse is good enough to where he makes his own trips and he can get the jump on a lot of other horses, such as All Night Moonlight or Blue Cheese. And I feel like if he runs anywhere near, those mid 80s to high 80s, even the 90 buyer he ran at Fairgrounds last year, I feel like he definitely makes a lot of sense, at least underneath, if not even on the win end. No one even has the 3 either. So I guess I'll talk about the 3 real quick as well. Number 3, Behemoth Star, 4-1 on the morning line. Your second choice, Shane Wilson. This horse is 11 for 12 at Fairgrounds. This horse has made $300,000 at the Fairgrounds alone. I'm sure you guys noticed, and probably this is why you guys went against him, is that his last 2 races have been absolute duds since he came back from that effort Derby weekend at Evangeline Downs. They've been trying to get him back on the turf. Hasn't really worked out. Now comes back to Fairgrounds where this horse relishes this track. No matter where he runs, on the dirt or the turf, he's run on both surfaces, won on both surfaces at the fairgrounds. Again, 12 for 15 in the money at this distance as well. Just one that I want to keep in mind, and definitely the horse out of the front runners in this race that I want to at least have underneath, if not on the win end as well, because this is definitely a spread race. If the weather does stay, and C-Money, you're taking my thunder a little bit, but that's a great point. Behemoth Star looks like a solid value choice if the weather stays dry, absolutely, and especially if the pace does not heat up. Behemoth Star is definitely could be even the most likely winner in this race. However, this race, of course, as we mentioned before, is pretty wide open. Charlie, I'll let you touch on yours and then throw it over to Patrick. And Pat, you could talk about your number one, and then we'll move on. But you have the number 5, Charlie, Cosmic Train, in third.
Yeah, I just think this is another one who, again, in a race that's wide open, is super interesting. And for me, would be another one from a value perspective that is super intriguing to me. Should be sitting a stalking trip. Has been running in some pretty decent races, for relative to horses in this field, and is running plenty of these, again, stakes races, and has run well in them. I understand, obviously, he hasn't quite gotten the job done, but 2 seconds is nothing to be embarrassed about. And then, that race 3-back was a bit of a strange one where it was a super hot pace and the horse was 10 lengths off the lead and then rushed all the way up to the lead. And then after trying to rush up 10 lengths, had nothing left. So that's when I draw a line through. But then, yeah, you look at these last 2 efforts and, I get that they were trying to, similar to your 3, get this horse on the turf. But it didn't seem to matter because despite trying to get the horse on the turf, still ran a very respectable 4th after, again, doing weirdly the same thing that had happened 3-back where the horse was way off the lead, rushed way up in a hot pace, and then fell back. So granted, it is something where, is it something now that the horse is starting to develop as a weird habit where they're trying to, get him to kind of, calm down and he just can't help but rush up? Obviously, that would be a slight concern. But I also just really like that Jose Ortiz is hopping aboard. I think that speaks volumes to an extent. And again, the figures with those mid-80 buyers on the dirt certainly fit in this spot. And I didn't even realize it until now at the time, but all 3 horses that I have in my top 3 have at least 3 wins at fairgrounds. So, you talk about horses for courses, and at the very least, I've picked 3 horses in an open race that tend to like it here. But I think kind of a common theme, and I'll toss it to Pat in a moment, Kyle, that you kind of brought up, which I think just makes this race even more open, is it seems like with the 3 you mentioned as an example, there's plenty of horses in this race that tend to run well at fairgrounds and take to this course and distance and like it here, which is just for me another reason why I would really want to, try to beat a favorite and kind of watch the board. Or if you're playing horizontals, just try to find ways to spread, because I think not even because the favorites are necessarily bad, but just because there's a lot of similar level horses at prices all over the place.
Yeah, and the thing I meant to mention earlier and didn't get to was fairgrounds has a very, very long stretch, which last year generally played towards those closers. Obviously, the British Cup Classic winners, Sierra Leone, ran that Derby trail down there and absolutely blew by everybody down the stretch in both races that he ran down there, Catching Freedom as well. It's another good point, Pat. So did tend to play to closers last year, and obviously always generally has, just due to the longer stretch. But that's one thing to at least mention, especially, Charlie, with a race like this, that's definitely to take it into consideration. Pat, last horse we'll talk about, the number 1, TD's Shining Lucky Star. I had to listen to a couple calls to be able to make sure I was saying that one correctly. TD's Shining Lucky Star. You have this horse in second, so obviously you think this horse is at least live underneath.
Yeah, I do. I just last out the horse, threw up an 80 buyer, but just the interest didn't seem all there. So I think this horse is trying to finish the year strong. And I think should, repeat within the 80 buyer speed figure. And I'm hoping takes another step forward in here in a race that, we've all declared to be pretty wide open and we would say would spread. So this is kind of my price horse in this race.
Well, at least to throw underneath. I mean, you get an 8-1 underneath and maybe you can get a 9-2 or something like that on top. That exacta pays really well. So Pat, love that fact. Again, trying to find a little bit of price somewhere, one place or another. I'm going 6-10-3. Charlie's going 7-6-5. Pat's going 6-1-7. Guys, moving on to race number 9, which is a really nice mile and a 16th optional, claiming $80,000. Non-winners of 3 lifetime. And as I switch over to the Equibase right now, it's a full field of 12. Again, this is why I wanted to cover this card, guys, because Fairgrounds has massive fields all over the place. Definitely very, very good betting races. Besides the couple I mentioned, obviously the last race is going to be of this variety, of the variety of heavy favorites. There really hasn't been any of them. So if you were right in a lot of these races, you can definitely get paid. But morning line favorite in race number 9 is the number 10, Gray's Fable. Ben Curtis and Stidham, as we mentioned before, the deadly duo down at Fairgrounds at 7-2. Second choice is the number 7, Create Trouble. Jaime Torres for Rob Atras at 9-2. And the third choice in the race is shared between the number 2, Evan Harlan, and the number 9, Ocean City for Barbosa and Brittany Russell at 6-1. Guys, we're switching over the picks right now. We are finally all going with different horses in this race. I'm going with the number 7, Create Trouble. Charlie's going with the number 10, Gray's Fable, the morning line favorite. Pat's going with the number 9, Ocean City. Charlie, you're going with the morning line favorite, so I'll let you go first. Again, pulling up the time form pace projector. But what'd you like most about the morning line favorite, the number 10, Gray's Fable?
Yeah, I mean, look, for someone who's been preaching, to anyone who will listen to me, how much I'm typically trying to beat these old horses and how I think, especially when they're short prices, it's not the way to go. When I was visually watching Gray's Fable, it's honestly just shocking and impressive to me. Now, I understand when you look at the resume, not that it's bad by any means, but, you look at a lot of the recent races, and it's not like this is some, 7 or 8 year old who's still been running in a bunch of graded races. Now, nonetheless, last year did run in 1 grade 3. That being said, ran against Money Supply, a horse that you and I liked a lot. Ran against Highway Robber, ran against Clyde's Got the Gun, ran against Bowie's last time, was a horse that I've been chasing for a little while. Has been running against some really tough horses, and for some reason just has still found a way to keep that incredible form. When you look at a horse who was coming off a layoff from July at 9 years old and pops a 92 buyer, and then after that follows that up second time off the layoff with an 88 buyer. For me, I thought that would have been a prime spot. And not only that, but to go off at 2-1 at 9 years old, I think in a field that strong just kind of speaks volumes about how this horse, somehow was still able to do it. And again, a lot of this would typically scream a horse that I'm trying to play against, but sometimes you just got to tip your hat and say that, if a horse is still proven they've got it until they've proven you that they are truly regressing, it's hard to hop off. And I think I'll get every bit of 7-2 because of the age and because of those concerns. Again, I think this race, really these last few races after the first 2 are a lot more wide open in the sequence. But again, it's one where even though I normally try to, point to these factors to prove against, the horse has done nothing wrong. So I don't really see a reason to penalize him now. And he has plenty of different figures that fit in this spot.
Look, I agree with you. I have him in 3rd. Obviously, he completely fits in this race. I couldn't agree with you more. However, I don't know how much speed there really is in this race. And there's been times where he has run very well without pace. Although even in that Churchill race where it's black figures, they did go 22-3 to the opening quarter. Granted, 47-3 to the half mile. So they got a 25-second breather in there and still ended up going by. However, I just don't know how much pace there really is in this race. And this is a horse that can be a little bit pace dependent. I ended up going with the number 6. Actually, Pat, I'll let you go first. The number 9, Ocean City. You want to talk about pace dependent. This is the complete opposite. This is the horse that should be on the front end early and in your eyes, should be able to take him all the way.
Yeah, that's kind of my first idea there was that, take him all the way. And then my other thing was, that race at Laurel actually came back to be pretty decent because the horse Swiftshirt came back to win at Aqueduct recently, and I think if I'm correct was that last weekend because the boss and I had a little pick 5 going in that sequence there, and that horse was good for us in that spot. And I just think it's a good point to make. Brittany Russell's here for the first time, and I think it kind of shows the direction that Fairgrounds is going. Like we said, the turf course seems to be in great condition. And I think it's going to be, should be a great winter meet for them, especially with connections like, Brittany coming down there with some, quality horses.
Oh, muted.
Kyle, just unmute.
Yep, my bad. Sorry, my nose was acting up. I got my allergy pills wearing off. But either way, yeah, absolutely. Especially you have Barnsley, Brittany Russell coming down there. Should be a really nice meet for them. Hopefully everything continues to stay strong. But Ocean City, I completely agree with. I have this horse in 2nd. I think, like I said, as I mentioned, I don't think there's very much speed in this race at all. And time form pace projector that I brought up at the start of this race definitely backed that up. But when I'm kind of looking at this and I want to say who's the best horse in the race, I thought that last race for Create Trouble, guys, was as good as it gets. Sat right off, and again, got a really nice trip. But again, set off Dude in Colorado, who was a nice horse for, I believe, Maker now. Used to be Pletcher, I think Maker now, and absolutely blew by that horse and powered away down the stretch. They went 50 flat for that half mile. However, with the 9 in here, the 9 should go past the 7. I think the 9's a little bit faster than Create Trouble early. If Jaime Torres can just bring this horse to the outside around the 9 and just sit right off the 9, I love Create Trouble in this spot, and I feel like he can just get a really nice and easy trip. But even if he doesn't, I think the 7-9 is very, very honestly, it's very predictable in this race. That if Ocean City can go out, maybe not last the whole way around and Create Trouble goes by, I still think Ocean City can hang on for a pretty decent piece, especially if they don't go that fast early. You guys both have number 2, Evan Harlan, in second, which I completely understand. I've personally just never been too much of a fan of his. He was running, at Keeneland and all that's won at Keeneland at 22-1 over Dude in Colorado, as I mentioned before. Pat, I'll let you go first. Charlie, feel free to piggyback on anything, but you guys both like Evan Harlan for second.
Yeah, I've been chasing, you said you're not a big fan of Evan Harlan. I've been chasing this horse, was not on this horse at Keeneland that day at 22-1. And now I feel like I've been trying to, catch the spot and haven't been able to. This seems to be a more realistic spot for Evan Harlan. But, we shall see. Has won here in the past. So I'll see. Charlie, I don't know if you had anything else to say, where you expect this horse to be, what trip. I'm hoping doesn't press the 9, but we shall see.
No, I feel the same way. I mean, I haven't been chasing this horse. I can't speak to that. But what I can say is the figures certainly fit. This is an easier spot. I think he can save all the ground on the rail. And I think realistically that this 2 horse, should be faster naturally than the 1 horse. I don't see why the 2 couldn't just immediately go save all the ground, sit the trip on the rail, and just let some other horses do the dirty work. This was one I was really tempted to put on top. But obviously before I knew Pat's thing about chasing this horse, my main kind of concern is he doesn't really like to necessarily get the job done and win. He kind of just seems like a horse that really likes to consistently run very solid, respectable efforts. We're like, oh, he didn't run awful, and he'll outrun his odds a lot of times. But I feel like now at 6-1, that kind of is what he should be in this spot, and there's nothing wrong with him being fairly priced at 6-1 instead of being 12-1. That doesn't change things for me. I just think for me it more so kind of is one of those where Pat's talking about trying to find the exact spot, whereas for me I'm kind of at the point, again, not that I've chased the horse, but at the point of just like, I want to see it before and then I'll believe it. But I'm happy to put this horse in the money because, to be fair to him, he's running the money, 10 out of 18 times. So more than 50% of the time he's been running in the money. So still a very, very talented horse who's brought in some decent money against tough fields. And I think the other thing that only made me a little bit hesitant and why I couldn't put this one on top is I just feel like with the Brendan Walsh to Jose Ortiz connection, which is by far going to be the biggest trainer and jockey in this race, and some of the names this horse is run against, I can't see this horse being less than 4-1, 9-2. Whereas I would rather want to demand a little more of a price to put this one on top. But still a nice horse and another open race, one I would want in the horizontals for sure.
And you hit the nail on the head for me, Charlie. I completely agree with you. Last horse we'll bring up, guys, is number 5 out of deductions. I'm glad you had this horse in there, Charlie, because I always got to talk about a great trainer, of course, out of the Midwest, Arlington legend Chris Block for Team Block, as you don't see too much nowadays. David Cohen also coming down to ride at Fairgrounds, which is really nice to see because he's very talented as well. So, wrap it up with this race. What'd you like most about out of deductions for a little bit of a sneaky price in there?
Yeah, another one who I just feel like has consistently put up decent figures. I mean, I thought 2 things that really spoke volumes to me. One, obviously, like you touched on, Chris Block and David Cohn, who's more so known for Illinois racing, to come over to Fairgrounds. I think, A, it's great for him, but B, I don't feel like you do that for a horse that you think is just, coming out just to be there and finish, just go around the circle and finish way out of the money. I think it's because they think they have something. And number 2, most importantly for me, was the fact that Chris Block, who, don't get me wrong, there's going to be times from time to time where he'll put his horse as a longer shot horse and take chances. But I feel like there's no reason he would put him in a Keeneland race that talented last time out against Peros, a horse that I, personally love a lot, and Irish Aces, who I think is super talented, and people in the podcast really like both those horses. I just feel like there's no reason Chris Block throws this horse in that spot last time out unless he thinks he has something. And look, I understand it wasn't a fantastic effort by any means, but look, the horse was almost 22-1 that day, was closer forward than usual in a hot pace, which is not easy. I mean, you look at those fractions they said, and those are not easy fractions, especially on a mile and a 16th. I just think here, again, it shows a lot of confidence and belief to send the horse out of this spot, is in an easier field. I think can sit a nice stalking trip. And again, another open race is one I would use in the horizontals. And I think this is a great horse to consider in reverse strike keys or just somewhere underneath.
Yeah, and obviously these fairgrounds turf races were notorious for building up, big prices. So definitely could be one if the pace melts down. However, obviously, I don't think that's going to be the case, but I've definitely seen dumber things with horses going around in a circle. I'm going 7, 9, 10. Charlie's going 10, 2, 5. Pat's going 9, 2, 7. Guys, moving on to the last race was race number 10. And of course, the fitting end, which is another Louisiana state bred stakes race for fillies. However, if you guys are enjoying the content, please go down below the video player. Please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. We would greatly appreciate it. Completely free to do and is the best way to help out our channel. So please go down there and do that if you guys are enjoying the show. Race number 10, guys, as I bring up the final Equibase John Valene Memorial Stakes to 1 mile and 70 yards. Basically just the exact race as number 8, but for fillies and mares. It draws another full field of 10 but this one has a very, very, very heavy morning line favorite, the number 3, Free Like a Girl, at 3 to 5. And again, a lot of these races have been open and great betting races, as they say. However, this one is definitely going to be a very low favorite. Second choice to the outside, the number 8, Clearly a Test, Jose Ortiz, Shane Wilson at 5 to 1. And third choice, the number 6, Accommodate Eva at 6 to 1. Switching over our picks right now, guys. Not too much to talk about. You guys can guess. We're all going with the number 3 on top. However, a little bit different underneath. A lot of us have the 8. Charlie has the 9. Pat has the 4. So I'll let Pat talk first about the 3, and then Charlie can feel free to touch on anything else. Don't need to talk about her too much because she is very, very talented comparatively, and especially talented against this state-bred company. But Free Like a Girl, probably a very deserving 3 to 5 favorite in this race.
Yeah, for sure. I just like how she's, found her way into and out of state-bred races. They pick and choose her spots. This $5,500 purchase has made over $2 million. That's ultra impressive. The concerning thing, I guess we can say, more than the positive, is maybe the decrease in buyers in the last 3. But other than that, she finds a way to win, on the wire, by open lengths. But she's just really, really consistent. And I don't see why that would change in this spot, because this is one of the more softer fields that she's faced of recent. So, I'm not going to try and beat her in this spot. I know, the 8 is of interest to us, Kyle, a little bit. But other than that, if I'm playing a 3-8 exact, I'm really not trying to do much else.
Yeah, Charlie, I mean, Free Like a Girl makes a ton of sense. The only thing people can say is she ran on November 8th, so she'll be going off of 2 weeks rest. However, she ran in the La Troyenne off of 2 weeks, just over 2 weeks rest, and lost by 3 3/4 to Idiomatic. So to me, the distance in between races doesn't mean too much to me.
Yeah, and also if you want to go even further back, ran March 8th at Oak Lawn Park and then got shipped to Fairgrounds and won back-to-back races. So I don't think that's a concern. I think the class is just too good. And I think, if you look anywhere, for starters, like Pat said, the story alone is incredible. This horse costs $5,500 and has made over $2 million. But then you see 20 out of 44, nearly winning 50% of the time for that sample size is just absurd. And then 11 seconds, 6/3. You look at Fairgrounds, 5 wins, 3 seconds, 1/3. So not just one that's ran against tough and, wins everywhere, but specifically, has spent, almost a quarter of her races at Fairgrounds and has won half those races at Fairgrounds. So one that, takes well to the course. Distance is not a worry at all. I feel like when you really look at the sequence, the reality is the first 2 legs, you try to go pretty narrow, 2 deep, maybe 3 at most in one of those legs. Races 8 and 9, you spread and try to catch a price. And then in this race, you kind of either single the 3 or you try to beat the horse. But going into the others, again, we talk about this all the time. You want to try to create value in this races. And I think the answer to doing that is if you can find a decent bomb to place underneath the heavy favorite. I don't care if that horse goes off at 1-5. You pick a 15-1 horse, and that exact is going to pay something. I'm not saying it's going to be ridiculous, but you're probably getting decent enough odds to make it worth your while if you think you can hit it. I'll let you guys talk about the 8 more. I think the horse makes sense. It's just with Ortiz and 5-1, not something I'm excited about. The 9 is a lot more enticing to me. This is one where I understand there's no buyer that really jumps out at you. That being said, I like that she's only 3 years old. I like that she's an improving 3-year-old. And when you look at her, earlier, start of this year, ran a 39 buyer, then breaks the main at 61, ran a 44, still nothing that great. But then you look at these last 4 efforts, jumped up to a 68. I understand that's not ridiculous, but for this field, that matters. Then I know kind of seemed to table out there, but then off a pretty decent layoff from June to November, then comes back. And after being 11 lengths off the lead in not a sprint, but still 7 furlongs, trying to come back from 11 lengths off the lead is not easy, and was able to just get up. And also took money on that day too. I just like that this horse is improving. I like the numbers as well for the trainer, even though it's one I don't know that well. I don't care who you are. If you're winning at 22% for 99 starts, that's enough to catch my attention. And again, you're going to get a great price for an improving 3-year-old. I just think if you want to find value, if you can find a double-digit odd horse that you'll get roughly those odds on to put underneath, why not take a shot?
I mean, look, I have her in 3rd. I completely agree with you from every standpoint that you just said. I have the 8 in 2nd. I mean, look, she makes the most amount of sense. That 2 back at the Evangeline Downs at a mile, 3-5, and only won by a head, but was ahead the entire way. She makes a ton of sense. Shane Wilson obviously gets Jose Ortiz. Price is something that I'd be completely against at 5-1, as opposed to something like just single the 3 and move on. But the 9 is definitely the little bit of the juice in this race, if you will. Clearly, a test makes a ton of sense for 2nd. Pat, I'll throw it to you. Anything more you want to add on Clearly a Test, and then go into your 3rd choice, and we'll move on to best bets.
Clearly a Test is the one that I'm trying to get underneath. I looked last out, and I don't know, that last race just wasn't really there for me. The horse had to go 7 wide at one point, but her previous 4 were fantastic. So I think this horse is the one that I want, underneath in this spot. And then the 4, Dixie Farmer, listen, she is, I was having trouble finding a horse in 3rd, if I'm going to be quite honest with you. But I did look at that last race and, did close in to a pretty fast pace in the mud for, kind of the quality of that field. So I thought, why not try and get her underneath at 15-1 in a spot where I think that, her buyer's fit for an underneath 3rd, 2nd, 3rd, or 4th spot.
Yeah, look, man, my mantra. I'll never talk anyone off a double-digit horse. So good luck to you with the 4 trying to get her underneath. But the 8, I agree with, makes a lot more sense, at least from that standpoint. I'm going 3-8-9. Charlie's going 3-9-8. Pat's going 3-8-4. Guys, move on to best bets here. Charlie, I have you listed first, so I guess you're going to go first. 2 exactas and maybe even squeeze a double in there. Why not? Because you're going 2 straight races. Going exacta 4 over 3-6 in race number 6, and an exacta in race 7, 6 over 8-10. So trying to go single 1 on top at a pretty decent price and try and get something underneath to boost up that exacta.
Yeah, it's funny. Without even seeing your picks, I think I just know you so well at this point. Part of the reason I didn't do a 4-6 double is when I looked at it, I thought this just screams Kyle Roscoe. So I'll go a different way to not have us repeat, but that would be another bet I would give out. Look, I think a steer makes a ton of sense. It's a horse I feel like a lot of people on our podcast have talked about a bunch because we've covered multiple races of her and we've consistently been interested against her running against much better. And look, again, I think just for the standards that she's been held to and we've held her to, she hasn't quite always performed, but it's not like she's been running poor. I like the relief. I don't know if you'll get 4-1, but anywhere near those odds makes sense. And then look, we all have the same top 3 in some order, and I think it's because these 3 we all just agree are clearly a cut above the rest. Look, I feel like if there's not enough pace, I think this 3 could actually absolutely stay up for 2nd. And I think if there is enough pace, there's no reason strike when ready can't get up for 2nd. And then going into the other bet, you talked about it a lot, Kyle, but I think Brown and Brown makes a ton of sense. Again, I don't just jump onto Gulfstream horses or jump off just because they're Gulfstream horses. I'm realistic if I think they, are in with a shot or not. And I think with the setup and ability and the getting the rest and working forwardly and the class difficulty, how good this horse has been at this level against State Company, I just think makes an absolute ton of sense. And then again, looking for other ones, I know Patrick is high on top. And look, if that horse can stay up and handle the pace, certainly makes sense. And then again, the price horse that I really like underneath that you have as well, Kyle, in the mix is Clear as a Bell, another one that is just improving. I think could be very interesting underneath.
Mr. South Beach trying to explain that he doesn't have a bias towards the horses coming from South Beach. But
yeah, exactly.
Either way, Charlie, like I said, I completely agree with everything on the screen there. You and I had both the same top picks in both those races. So good luck to you and basically good luck to us in those races. Patrick, you're going to go next. Talked about it a little bit. The number 3, El Dinero in race number 7, trifecta key underneath. In race number 9, trying to profit off of that favorite in the last race, Free Like a Girl, going to the 2-9 with the 3, starting in race number 9 in a double. Pat, talk about your best bets.
Yeah, I hinted at it with El Dinero. I feel like that horse is has a really solid chance to get in the money. I'm not sure if that horse will win. I didn't have that horse on top, but just the way things have been trending with that horse, I think this horse should find itself hitting second or third. And then in race 9, I got Evan Harlan in there. That the good old file the divorce papers could be in effect. But also, I have Ocean City. So I got both 6-1 on the morning lines, paired up with a horse, in the 3, Free Like a Girl, who's 3-5 morning line, and we all think is a pretty solid bet. Other than race 3 that we talked about earlier on in the card, I think this one could be the second best, likely winner on the card. So see if I can get a double in there to price it up and make some positive money on the day.
I mean, look, I tried to explain on Frank Scatoni's show. Doesn't matter if you can pick good favorites and try and build around them. You can easily make 5 when there's nothing wrong with making 5-1, 4-1 on any money, because you know what? I was once told, I believe profit is profit. I believe is profit's good or something like that. When you're making money, life's pretty good, I believe is basically what he meant to say. If I remember correctly. Charlie, douchebag, I did not do the double. However, I did do a win bet on the number 6, Brown and Brow. I talked about it at length. Love that horse. Love the stalking trip. Should get a pretty nice trip and hopefully a decent price on that one. However, race number 9, again, trying to use Free Like a Girl in some which way to try and boost up that 3-5 odds. I'm going a big double 7-3. That's with Create Trouble, my top pick in that race. But just in case Ocean City does get away, going a little bit smaller double 9-3, can also Dutch them and can do whatever. But those are my 2 best bets. Brown and Brown race number 7, the double starting in race number 9. Big double 7-3 and small double 9-3. Also, I want to shout out a couple people in the chat because I haven't seen these names in a little while. So, but they're back. So I want to just shout out real quick. TC Markham, my friend, said the 3 is a total single in the last race. Could not agree with you more. And he says a pick 5, 4, 6, all 3. So 3 singles, 3 sizzles. Excuse me, my bad, TC. But those are all my top picks, and I'll be fine with going all in those middle 2 legs. TC, love it, my friend. You might even see a little bit something like that from me. And of course, C Money, my friend. Haven't seen you in a long time. Thanks so much for joining the show. Greatly appreciate it. And I'm not letting this one go without mentioning it a little bit. Kyle could be Ed McMahon, which he's talking about, of course, a character, but have to trade his Miller Lite for a Budweiser. And Paul, you will never, ever see that in my hand as long as I shall live. But guys, that'll end episode 107 of Bettin and Boozin. Thank you guys all for joining us. Thanks you guys for watching. Greatly appreciate it. It's been an absolutely fun show. The chat's been great. So again, thank you guys all so much. If you guys enjoyed the show, or if you guys are watching on X, please come over to our YouTube channel. You can click on the video itself and come over to our YouTube channel, or search HHH Racing Podcast in the YouTube bar. Give us a like and give us a subscription. We would greatly appreciate it, as it's completely free and the best way to help out our channel. For my co-hosts, Patrick Kunsel, Charlie Freeman, this has been your host, Kyle Roscoe, in episode 107 of Bettin and Boozin here on the HHH Racing Podcast, covering Fairgrounds opening weekend Saturday and their late pick 5 and 4 Louisiana bred stakes. And until next time, everybody, crush those bets, win those photos, and stay safe, everyone. We'll see you in the next one. Have a good night.